I decided to visit my wife at her job as a CEO. At the entrance, there was a sign that said, "Authorized personnel only." When I told the guard I was the CEO's husband, he laughed and said, "Sir, I see her husband every day. There he is coming out right now." So I decided to play along. My name is Edward. I'm 58 years old, and until that Thursday afternoon in November, I thought I knew my wife Diane better than anyone in the world. It started as a simple idea. Diane had been working relentlessly, pulling those 14-hour days that came with being CEO of Sterling Financial. I'd grown tired of eating dinner alone, the television my only company, while she texted updates about board meetings. That morning, she'd rushed out without her usual tea, and I thought bringing her favorite Earl Grey and a homemade sandwich might lift her spirits. The downtown office tower gleamed in the autumn light as I parked. I'd only visited Diane's office a handful of times over the years. She always said it was easier to keep work and home separate, and I'd respected that. Perhaps I'd respected too many boundaries. I walked through the revolving doors carrying the tea and brown bag, feeling oddly nervous. The lobby was all glass and steel, the kind of intimidating corporate space that made me grateful for my quiet architecture practice. A security guard sat behind an imposing desk, his nameplate reading Jenkins. "Good afternoon," I said. "I'm here to see Diane Mitchell. I'm her husband, Edward." Jenkins looked up from his screen, confusion crossing his face. "You said you're Mrs. Mitchell's husband?" "Yes, that's right. Edward Mitchell. I brought her lunch." His expression shifted to something I couldn't read. "Sir, I see Mrs. Mitchell's husband every day. He just left about 10 minutes ago." Before I could respond, he gestured toward the elevators. "There he is now, coming back." I turned and watched a tall man in an expensive gray suit stride through the lobby. He was younger than me, maybe early 40s, with the easy confidence of someone who owned every room he entered. His hair was perfectly styled, his shoes gleaming. Everything about him spoke of success and authority. The man nodded to Jenkins. "Afternoon, Bill. Diane asked me to grab those files from my car." "No problem, Mr. Reeves. She's in her office." Marcus Reeves. I knew the name from Diane's work stories, her executive vice president who joined the company 4 years ago, the man she occasionally mentioned in professional contexts. Always business. My hands went numb around the teacup. The brown bag crinkled as my grip tightened. Everything in me wanted to speak up, but my voice had abandoned me. Jenkins looked between Marcus and me, genuine confusion creasing his features. "Sir, are you sure you're Mrs. Mitchell's husband? Because Mr. Reeves here is married to her." The words hit me like physical blows. Married to her, present tense, a simple matter-of-fact statement that shattered my reality. Marcus paused, his attention drawn to our conversation. When his eyes met mine, I saw recognition flicker across his face. He knew exactly who I was. "Is there a problem here?" Marcus's voice was smooth, controlled. Something cold passed through my mind in that moment. Every instinct screamed at me to explode, but a deeper wisdom, born from decades of reading people, told me to play along. "Oh, you must be Marcus," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Diane's mentioned you. I'm Edward, a friend of the family, just dropping off some documents." Marcus's shoulders relaxed, though his eyes remained watchful. "Ah, yes, Diane's mentioned you too. She's in meetings most of the afternoon, but I can make sure she gets whatever you brought." I handed over the tea and sandwich. "Just tell her Edward stopped by." "Of course." I walked back to my car in a daze. Sitting in the driver's seat, I stared at the building through my windshield. 28 years of marriage. 28 years of sharing a home, dreams, fears, inside jokes. 28 years of believing I knew this woman completely. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Running late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." Love you. The words that had once brought me comfort now felt like another lie. I spent the next 3 days as a detective in my own life. I found the key to an apartment across town. I discovered credit card charges for dinners at restaurants she told me were client meetings. On her laptop, I found calendar entries that mapped out an entire parallel existence, lunches with Marcus, weekend trips, a shared schedule that had nothing to do with me. But the most devastating discovery came from the apartment itself. It wasn't a temporary hiding place. It was a home, fully furnished, with photos on the mantle of Diane and Marcus at company events, on beaches I didn't recognize, living a life I'd never been part of. In the bedroom, her clothes hung next to his. On the kitchen counter, I found a folder labeled Future Plans, containing house listings, vacation brochures, and a consultation summary from a family law firm. Diane had been planning to divorce me for at least 2 years. She'd been documenting what she called my emotional unavailability and lifestyle incompatibility, systematically building a case while I remained oblivious. I sat on their couch surrounded by evidence of their shared life and tried to process the magnitude of the deception. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated replacement. Marcus hadn't just stolen my wife. He'd systematically assumed my role while I was being written out of the story. I chose Saturday morning for the confrontation. "We need to talk," I said, setting the folder on the kitchen table between us. Diane looked up from her coffee, her expression shifting as she saw the documents. For a moment, something flickered across her face that might have been relief. "I found the apartment," I said. "I know about Marcus. I know about the divorce planning." She set down her mug with deliberate precision. When she looked at me again, the mask was gone. The loving wife had disappeared. In her place sat someone I barely recognized. "How much do you know?" she asked calmly. "Everything." She nodded slowly, her fingers drumming against the table. "How long have you known?" "Since Thursday, when I visited your office and the security guard told me he saw your husband every day. He meant Marcus." Something cold passed through her features. "I suppose this complicates things." "Complicates things?" My voice rose with all my efforts. "Diane, we've been married for 28 years. You've been living with another man, planning to divorce me, and all you can say is that this complicates things?" She sighed with mild irritation. "Edward, let's not be dramatic. We both know this marriage has been over for years." "I didn't know anything. I thought we were happy." "Happy?" Her laugh was humorless. "When was the last time you showed any interest in anything beyond your architecture practice and your quiet evenings at home? You've been content to let me carry the financial burden, the social obligations, the responsibility for building a life worth living. I supported your career. I was proud of what you accomplished. You were passive. You stopped growing, Edward. I kept hoping you'd develop some passion for something, but you never did. You've been the same man at 58 that you were at 38. Each word was a carefully aimed dart. I sat in silence, absorbing the weight of her betrayal. For years, I'd been trying to be enough for someone who had decided I wasn't. "Frank and I lasted exactly 6 weeks after he moved to Denver," she said, during a phone call months later, after the divorce was finalized. "Turns out our great love affair was more about the excitement of secrecy than about actually wanting to live together." "Are you sorry?" I asked. "For how it happened? Yes. For losing you? Every day. I hope you find peace, Diane, but I found mine." And I had. My new apartment was smaller than our house, but it felt spacious in ways that had nothing to do with square footage. I could read in the evening without worrying that my contentment was somehow disappointing. I've even started dating a woman named Helen who appreciates quiet dinners and found my love of simple pleasures charming rather than limiting. At 58, I'd learned that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing something you thought you couldn't live without. Diane had been right about one thing. We both deserved to be with someone who truly understood us. She deserved someone capable of the same deception she was, and I deserved someone whose love didn't come with conditions, expiration dates, and exit strategies. As I turned off the lights in my small, honest apartment, I realized that for the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged.